Right. I'm Morgan Clark. I'm a recovered compulsive eater, and Jillian asked me to share a little bit about my program and our group. There's a lot that I could talk about today, so I'm just kind of gonna wing it. I'm mostly gonna talk about the program of the 12 steps. I know you all. I'm sure you're familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous. So we in our group, we work a program much like, well, we aim to work a program as close to identical as the original program as possible of the 12 steps. Let me gather my thoughts. Yeah, so the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous was the basic text that was originally written by the first 100 pioneers of AA. And we study the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous like a textbook for recovery because it is. It's the original recipe, so to speak, for how someone can get recovered from any addictive illness. It works for compulsive eating. It works for whatever the addictive behavior may be. The reason we are so big on working the original program and following in the footsteps of the pioneers is because, back in the early days of AA, recovery success rates were very high, 75% or higher for people who came to AA and worked the program. But over the years, the Big Book was written in 1939. So, that's been, gosh, we're getting close to a century now. Over the years, a lot of hybrid ways to work the program and the steps have kind of come about. Things like, discussion meetings and, rehab and therapy groups and stuff like that, which are all good things. Please don't please don't hear me wrong. Those are wonderful, wonderful things. However, the Big Book was written and the original program was developed for the alcoholic who, tried all of those things and still could not get recovered. So there was a doctor, Dr. Silkworth, at Towns Hospital, and he worked with thousands upon thousands of alcoholics, back in the early days. And he found that there was a variety of alcoholics that no matter how many times they came to rehab, how many times they came to treatment, they could not get recovered. They couldn't stay sober. They were always returning, and it didn't matter how bad their lives got. They just continued, or how much they wanted to stop, or what their intentions were. They would come to the Towns Hospital, and Dr. Silkworth would work with them, and they would get sober, and they would go out, and they would always return or die, quite frankly. And he found this to be about 10% of the alcoholics that he worked with. About 1 in 10 were of a chronic variety. The Big Book talks about the mild, the moderate, and the chronic alcoholic. And again, so when we study the Big Book, we switch out the word alcoholic for compulsive eater, okay? And the same can be done for sex, gambling, narcotics, whatever the addictive illness, codependency, whatever the addictive illness may be. The same program of action works for all of us, thankfully. And so, if you are a mild or a hard drinker, then, treatment centers and, therapy and more traditional means of treatment would work for you most of the time if you really wanted to stop. But Dr. Silkworth found that there was this chronic type that could not stop and say stop no matter how hard they tried. And so my group, OABBSG, it's not my group, I'm part of the group. It was started about a decade ago, and it was birthed out of a return to that original 12-step program, okay, as it's outlined in the Big Book. That's all we do is study the Big Book and follow its instructions. So in the 80s, there were 2 men, Joe and Charlie, who were part of the original 100, and 100, men and women who got recovered and wrote the Big Book. Bill Wilson mostly wrote the Big Book, but it was a collaborative effort. And I believe Bill actually sponsored either Joe or Charlie. I can't remember which one. But anyway, they were part of the original 100, and they noticed they were alcoholics. They've since passed away. But they noticed that, there were so many alcoholics coming to AA, modern day AA, and not getting recovered. And they were just watching these people die. So they kind of made it their mission to start speaking about and sharing about the original program, the way it was originally worked and given to us by God. I personally believe that the 12 steps is a gift from God because it is a miracle. It's established a miracle in my life. I'm not really telling my story here today. I would love to come back and tell that at some point, or I'm trying to fit a lot of information in a really small period of time. I could do a whole, PowerPoint presentation. If anyone would like to reach out and contact me, I can talk a lot more about a lot of other things, but it does produce a miracle in one's life. Because if you are a true chronic compulsive eater, alcoholic, gambling addict, whatever it is, then you've tried everything else and nothing has worked for you. You are truly powerless, right? That is step one. And so let me just check the time here. Yeah. Joe and Charlie set about to inform the public of the way, things were done in the beginning because it worked, right? Like we often say, it's kind of like your great grandmother's recipe that's been passed down for generation after generation. If the recipe produces, this product that you love and your family loves and has enjoyed, for years, you don't change the recipe, right? The recipe works. And so there were a lot of groups that were born out of Joe and Charlie's efforts to get people back to the big book, to get people back to the original program of action. And my group was birthed out of that movement. Yes, so there was a group in Dallas. Cliff was sponsored by, again, it was either Joe or Charlie. They're always a package deal to me. I can never remember exactly which one it was. But anyway, the woman who started our group found the Primary Purpose Group of Dallas, and they were working a program exactly as it's outlined in the big book, based on the original program. And for the first time in her life, she had been in OA for decades. But she was in OA for decades and just continued to, unfortunately, get more and more sick. She actually became anorexic while being in OA. She kept showing up because she knew she had this illness, but unfortunately, she wasn't getting full recovery. So she found this group, one of the groups that was, again, birthed out of Joe and Charlie's movement to get people back to the big book. And for the first time in her life, experienced full recovery, true freedom and neutrality around food, around compulsive eating, which is what her addictive illness was. And so she started our group, OA Big Book Solution Group. And for a decade now, we have over 200 recovered members who live fully recovered lives. It's not a cure, it's a daily reprieve. We have to do a lot of work. This original program is not easy by any means. It is intense. We are asked to, if we're willing to devote the same amount of time to the steps and the program that we were to our compulsive eating or that we were to our illness. And if you need a 12-step program for an illness, you're spending a lot of time on that thing, okay, like 24/7. So, that means we have to work a really, really strong program in order to stay recovered. But as long as we live in the steps and work the steps and do the things that we're supposed to do, we have a set of precise instructions. It's not hard. The instructions are simple. We always say they're simple, but they're not easy. And to really have the willingness to work the program as it's outlined in the big book, you have to be pretty desperate coming in. I mean, you have to have tried everything else. You have to be, at the end of the road. We always say that, we're the last house on the block. Because if not, it's a time consuming, it's inconvenient, it's a whole new way of life. You give so much of your life to it, and you have to truly be desperate in order to really, want and need the program. Now, the good news is, like, people come and go, right? I mean, we're always here. Some people make it halfway through the steps. Some people are here for a few years and then, they think, oh, okay, I've got this whooped, and they go back out and, that we're always here to be helpful. So if someone wants to get recovered, we're going to work them through the steps. We're going to help them. We're going to do all the things. They don't have to, sign up for the rest of their lives kind of thing. That's not how AA works, and that's not how our program with compulsive eating. I guess, I'm sorry, there's so much to say, and I want to give you all time to ask questions. Yeah, so it works. We follow the original recipe, we follow the precise instructions, and we have the same recovery that the original pioneers did. I'm going to read a paragraph out of the big book, page 84. This is the 10th step promises. So we work steps 1 through 9 really quickly, like in 2 to 3 weeks. And then we live in steps 10, 11, and 12 every day of our lives. That's how we stay recovered. Again, there's no cure. There's a daily reprieve. And that's we only have that as long as we are, working the steps and living in the program. I'm going to switch out the term alcohol for compulsive eater. But again, you could switch it out for, whatever the addictive illness may be. Page 84 in the big book. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even compulsive eating. For by the time we get through step 10, this sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in compulsive eating. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward compulsive eating has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We had not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react, so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And that fit spiritual condition is the steps. We work and live in the steps, and that's how we live in fit spiritual condition. So, especially in OA, and it depends on the fellowship, the 12-step fellowship, according to whatever the addictive illness may be. But, as you see here, you work the steps, and the promise is you receive freedom and neutrality. So you're not avoiding trigger foods. You're not using the steps to attempt to manage and control like how much you're drinking, right? You work the steps to get free of alcoholism. You work the steps to get free of whatever the addictive illness is. It truly is a miracle. It just comes through the effort of the steps and through the program. And I can go into a lot more detail about how all that works if I had more time. But in our group, we don't focus on food. We don't focus on weight. The alcoholic, the big book is clear that gets recovered can go to a bar and talk to someone and not worry about taking a drink. They can go to a wedding where there's alcohol being served. There's no way to completely avoid alcohol in the world that we live in, and there's no way to avoid food, right? We need it. We literally have to have it. But we